Welcome to Job Tales, the podcast showcasing all types of professions, and that hopefully helps you find the job of your life, whether it is your very first job or a career change. Today, my guest is Kimberly Lee, a police officer working in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Kimberly, when you were at school, did you know that you wanted to become a policewoman?
Not at all. I really kind of look back on my generation. There weren't that many visible female police officers that were out there, especially, that were even in the field. And so the ones that I might have seen would have been on TV. So they didn't seem something that would have been attainable at all. So that wasn't even on my mindset.
Okay, so it just happened by chance?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was working in advertising sales at a newspaper, and I had a degree, and I was not really happy doing sales. And a gentleman called from the police department that I work for and asked to put in a full page ad. The area that I was in really had a bunch of minorities and primarily Native Americans, and that's where they were targeting. And I asked him at the time what it would take to get a job like that. And he said, you have to have a degree. And I was like, okay, what kind of degree? And he said, any degree. And that was it. A year later, I was in the academy.
So there's a police academy that happens, is it after high school or instead of high school? How does it work in the United States?
Well, for us, it just really depends on what agency that you're working for. You're either going to have a bachelor, a high school diploma, or a GED, which is an equivalency to diploma. Or for us, for our agency, you have to have a bachelor's degree. So it just really depends. But no, there's no prep for that before you get into the law enforcement.
Okay. So you got in, and how long does it take?
Well, for my agency, because we have our own academy, it's around 22 to 26 weeks of the academy. Now I think we've gotten as long as 26 weeks. And then you do another 16 weeks of field training where you have another officer that trains with you. And that really means it's about a year before you're out on the streets by yourself. There's other places within the United States that you kind of go out on your own, and then they put you through we call it CLEATS, and counsel and law enforcement education and training. And they would end up having to do that within the year that they're there. And I don't really know how long that process is. It's shorter than what I had to go through.
Okay. When you saw that ad and then you asked what would it take to become a police officer, what sparked in your mind and said, okay, this is something that I could do, I would love to do?
Well, my degree is in journalism. So my background is in trying to write really great stories to really do the right thing. And I had other friends that were in law enforcement, but they were local. And so I kind of had a little bit of taste of what that looked like. And then when they sent that, I thought, wow, this is really kind of on the avenue of what sparks joy with me. And I had no clue exactly if that was going to be something that was going to be a really great fit. I knew it was going to be a big investment of my time, because it's just like any other education that you do. You don't just jump in it and then think, in 2 weeks I could do something else. This is a lifetime calling. And I thought, I'm going to be able to help people, and I had gone from writing stories and being a journalist to turning around and selling advertising. And some people may love doing that, and it's effective and it makes you some money, but it didn't bring any joy. So I thought this would be great. I could do something for other people. And that's really why I asked you to go ahead and send me the packet so I can start looking at the application.
What do you study when you're at the academy?
Oh gosh. It's amazing the things that you have to do. It's not just physical fitness, shooting, driving a car, but we have to study law. So you study local law, you study state law, you study even federal law. You have to know, search and seizure and not violating people's civil rights. And so there's a lot of ins and outs. I mean, it's a huge process. We've added mental health training in there for officers to be mental health responders. So as the years have progressed, officers, when they walk out of a car, they're the wealth of knowledge for citizens that comes up, and they either know the answer or they know the right direction to point them in. So there's a lot of information that goes into that officer, a lot of investment. that goes into that police officer.
Yeah, no, for sure. And did you find it easy to do you said 4 years of academy, you said?
It's pretty much one full year.
Ah,
Yeah.
one full year.
So
Okay, okay. I
yeah.
mean, was it fun? Was it hard? Or was it like we see in the movies? You know, that's all I can see. I mean, not
There are
knowing.
some fun spots to it. I think, because you get a class that you go through. And so you stay with them. And we started off with 28 students that were in there. And we're still very close. Like it's really funny because it almost becomes your family because you're with them the whole time. And I would say there were challenges because it's mental. It's not just the physical part, but you have to be determined that you're going to study the streets and memorize the 10 codes. And those are the 10 codes of the language that we speak to each other on the radio. You're going to have to make sure that you study before you come in and take a test. You're going to have to make sure that you focus when you're out shooting your firearm and you clean your gun and you come in the next day. So there was a lot of challenges on that end. And then the unknown, because if it's not something that you've typically done before, because I didn't go out shooting, I didn't get raised shooting a firearm, so there's a little bit of trepidation and fear. But if you have courage in yourself, then you kind of set some benchmarks on, well, I did that yesterday. I think I can do this today. And you just have to, mentally prepare yourself every time you go in. So it was challenging, but it was really worth it.
And you finish at the academy. Are you immediately recruited? Or do you have to go through a process, like on other jobs, you need to do an internship, you have to find a company to work for. Do you like stop at a police office and then you say, oh, I would like to work for you? How does it work?
Well, there's a variety of ways for officers or for people that are interested in doing this job to kind of get their foot in the door. For me, because I got hired immediately, I started making a salary and I just went straight out so you go to field training and then you're out in the field and you have your own car and you start taking calls and then there's ways to progress after that. Currently, we do have ways for officers to intern. And as a matter of fact, when I moved into an evidence and property room, I had interns that would come in and work for me that were from other colleges. So about the last year of their college career, they can select to intern with the police department. And I had to grade them and set assignments for them. And that way they can just kind of get embedded and see if that's something that they might like to do. And then we also have a pre-hire program for us. So if we go out and we recruit college educated people. And then if we're like, hey, we don't have an academy class that's going to start really quickly, then we will put them in a civilian position for a while and they will work with us before they go into the academy.
You were talking about agency before. Is it organized in a way that if you want to do, field work, then you do a certain type of academy, or like you get a basic training and then you specialize?
Well, every officer for our agency goes through the same schooling. So we're all the same. We start off the same playing field. And then from there, because I do work for a larger agency, so there's a lot of opportunity for us to be able to do different things and specialize in those things. And obviously, I can't specialize in everything. So you kind of pick what your niche is going to be. And some officers might want to go work detective division and they'll go there's a training class that they'll take before they are allowed to even put in for detective division. And then there's street crimes officers that will go out and target crime and violent crime in certain areas, and they'll get some specialty training. I really went the route of enforcement in driving impaired. So I'm a drug recognition expert and a DUI and intoxilizer instructor. And I kind of went that direction to get people off the streets that were impaired and driving under some type of intoxicant. So each one just kind of finds their own little niche and they can go in and have specialty training, but all police start on that same level.
At the same level. Okay. I'm impressed because 1 year sounds like very fast to me. Did you find that it was the right amount of time spent at the academy, or do you think, 2 years would be better, or is it enough? And then you actually do your actual training on the field afterwards when you become a police officer?
Like the answer to all your questions would be yes. Because really it is on, you cannot learn everything. I'm still learning. I think that's the greatest thing about this job. I love what I do. And if you are constantly in that mode that we have to learn something new, and we do because laws change. We recently had what's called the McGirt ruling, which for those that know what that is, it really changes how we deal with Native American tribes and the people that are, have tribal cards. And that means that we, have to go through different court systems with them. So there's a whole new thing that officers have to do with that. So there's a lot of new learning that goes along with that. So, a year of training is just enough. And then you have to be willing to continue that process, to continue to learn. And if you really want to do good at your job, you need to always stay in that mindset of learning.
Yeah. The workplace allows you to do that. I imagine that you can, the more you want to learn, then you get your opportunities to deepen your knowledge in one or the other aspects.
Well, we're in the mindset now, especially, and I think that's one of the reasons why we do have an agency that encourages, we've got people that have bachelor's degrees, is because they have that base of being able to get the education. And so we encourage that, and we set ourselves up that way. We're constantly in some type of training mode. I have to still have other classes, so I still have to take training throughout every year. So we all have to go through training. We have firearms again. This year, we're getting ready to do driving training out on the roadway. We'll have training on how to use a ballistic shield when you're going up to a car. We'll have handcuffing techniques and things like that. So we get refreshers every single year. So it doesn't end there.
Sounds very, very active, very diverse,
Yeah.
which is great. And what does a day look like in your line of work?
Yeah, for me, because I'm now a captain, so I've passed a lot of ranks. So there's a lot of work that I don't have to do, which is the day-to-day stuff of going out when it's really freezing cold and stopping cars or standing out on a street corner and directing traffic. So those things I've kind of what we call clipped out of. I don't have to do that anymore. For my level of work, when you make up higher up what I call in the food chain, your job now is logistics. I still have a patrol car that I drive. I still have a patrol uniform because I'm an administrative role, but I still work with officers that are out on patrol, and I'm at a patrol division. So I typically am looking at logistics. I'm trying to make sure that they have the things and the resources that they need to do their job. And I'm also kind of the mitigator in between, say, a city councilor, a mayor's directive, dealing with a recommendation from the chief and a major on trying to task some stuff, because the frontline officers don't need to deal with those kind of things, but they need people that have experience that can be able to mitigate that for them so the officer can do their job. So that's my day looks like coming in the mornings. I'm over a unit that is the street crimes unit. And so I usually get debriefed by the person that's working street crimes, and they go out and they serve search warrants and they go after bad guys, and they might go look at a house that needs to be reviewed. And then I talk to the other supervisors that are my peers. I've got administrative tasks that I have to do because I'm over a building and making sure that the building is taken care of. And right now, that's kind of how I know some other people that are within the city, is that I'm also helping with, organizing the renovation of the building. And in a couple of years, hopefully, depending, we'll be able to get the building renovated. And just kind of, I work with grants. Take a lot of meetings. I take a lot of phone calls. And by the end of the day, I honestly have done a lot of work. I just don't know what it is. I mean, it is a really very heavy lift, and it's very, very busy. But if I do my job right, officers don't have to worry about that, and they can do their job well.
I see. And do you have a fun anecdote of some of your past actions or things at work that happened to you?
Oh my gosh. I think that's the best part about this job, is because every day is something new, and there's probably not any fun stories that don't go out. Out of 27 years, I have several, and I will tell you of one that I think about all the time. And I'm pretty healthy. I run. But, me and foot pursuits aren't always great. I've been successful in foot pursuits just because there's usually somebody on the other side of that will catch the guy that's running, and he stops him at the end of the path. But in one particular one, I felt really pretty excited because this guy had been running for some time. So I knew he was tired. By the time I got to him, he was just kind of hobbling along. I thought, I'm going to catch this guy. And I got out of my car and I took off running, and it was dark, and the parking lot was not well lit. And just about the time I reached out to grab the back of his jacket, and I mean, just could feel it. I just knew he was right there. I started falling. I don't even remember falling until I hit the curb line and I hit my knee and it like my chest hit the curb and actually tore my shirt, ripped my vest cover. It bent my badge. It bent my nameplate and everything. And I got up. I was like, oh my God. And of course, the guy keeps going. And I got up and I realized I had also really blew out my knee. So like I landed on my knee, but I didn't know it. I got up and I had a hard time moving. And so I just kind of stepped with one foot and drug the other foot. And a supervisor came up and I was like, I think I've hurt my knee. And he said, that's fine. Let's just keep going. And I was like, I don't think you understand. I can't move. But we tried to like clear out this courtyard of apartments to see if we could find him. Find out later that we knew his name. So we got him later. But it didn't end there. So here I am humiliated because I fell down. I didn't catch him. And then I went back to the vehicle and I had not only when I exited the car really fast, I had shut the door and I had hit my ear. So my ear started swelling. And then I got to get in the car and the car was locked and I'd left the keys in it and it started to rain. And so I just sat, and by then everybody had left me and I just sat there just really dejected. I was like in the rain, I couldn't get in the car. My knees busted. The bad guy got away. My ear was swelling. And I had a buddy that ran with me on the shift and I hollered at him on the radio and he said, I'm across the street. So he came over. I sat in the car and found out later we were able to get the guy, but I was just like, the best laid out plans still are the funniest stories, but
that doesn't sound very fun anecdote for you. Maybe for the
No, but I will tell you this, my badge, a lot of officers will go and have them really polished and shined up. And I was showing people, I said, I've never had mine polished because if you do, you'll take out all of the scratches from that time that I fell down. So I've kept my badge the way it was when it got pinned on me 27 years ago.
You've been a policewoman ever since. So you, after this chapter of working as a journalist, that's all you've done your career, all along your career.
Well, actually, I have side hustles. So I have other things. I went and got my master's in English literature and rhetoric. And so I've taught at a local college, Composition 1 and 2. And then I've been working with the department on putting together grant writing groups. And we're getting ready to do some training for grants because that's law enforcement agencies are always hurting for funding. And if we can help them tap into some government resources or other avenues of funding that they can do. So I've kind of got my niche into writing and editing. I'm really good at that. So I do have those side hustles because I'm looking at a career that's not, typically 35 is going to be the max. And that's a funding thing. It's not a physical thing. But like right now I could retire today. I mean, once I hit 20, I could start looking at retiring. So I was thinking, what can I do next after this? And that's why I went and got my master's and thought, well, I could teach. It's a lot harder. Once I got started, I was like, wow, this is a lot of work teaching college kids. So I'm thinking maybe not so much. So it's good.
And is there an average time that people serve as police officers?
About 25 years.
25?
Yeah, they'll leave, usually at 25. And if I had not, like I said earlier, moving up the food chain, which I mean by making rank. So for us, we go officer, we have a sergeant rank, and we have a lieutenant rank, and then my rank is captain, and then you'll have major, deputy chief, and chief. And had I not moved up the food chain, I think it's really limited by age because it is a physically demanding job. I've got officer friends that are still officers and they are a little older than I am. And I think, wow, it's just to get out of that car, to go up on a call, to go into someone's home and not know what's going to happen. And you have to be like mentally prepared and physically prepared to be able to handle whatever is in that house or that's getting out of that car stop. And I think, I have to be realistic about what that looks like.
Besides for, the physical aspect, which is obvious, of course, are there other skills that you would say are ideal for or necessary for this job?
Oh gosh, communication.
Yeah.
That is seriously the very key there. And we have women in policing days where we'll have ladies come in and they get a whole day with female officers of doing defensive tactics and other training. And then I usually sit on the lunch panel with them, and they come in and they eat their sandwich and we answer any questions that they have. Our communication skills are really what's going to keep us safe. There's times when that doesn't happen. You're going to have somebody that doesn't want to have a talk with you, but the biggest weapon anyone has is really their brain. Like, how can I talk to you, reason with you, explain to you what it is that I need you to do without having to use physical force? And communication is the biggest skill that I would like to see more people work on. I think when we have youth that are going through and all they know is texting or, using Facebook, and they're not developing those communication skills, we need to work on that. And of course, I've got a degree in communication, so I just naturally fell into that, but I don't know how we can incorporate that more in a training session. But that is the biggest skill that people need to make sure they work on.
That's a very, very important one. And also negotiation skills, I imagine, and rhetoric, you say?
Rhetoric,
being able to talk. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else that can be useful?
I think problem solving really would be part of it. And I could go down the road of like, you should get yourself into some type of physical fitness, which is true, because being a police officer is mentally taxing. And I'm not saying that I have to go out and be the biggest, baddest guy out there. But I had to establish something that when I was very, very stressed out, I've gone through something that was, would dump a lot of adrenaline to your system. How do I handle that later? And a lot of it can do with, running, yoga, swimming, biking, some type of avenue that will help release a lot of that cortisol. And consequently, then it's going to assist me when I'm out on a call, because then I'm going to be working on my breathing techniques, slowing my roll a little bit and calming down before I talk to somebody. And that's really going to help me be more present in the moment and to address anything. So physical fitness, obviously, you've got to be able to do past physical, whatever the physical standards are for that agency, you got to be able to pass that. But I would like to see people doing that to where they have it on a long-term basis, because you've got officers that are going to pass away from a heart attack or a stroke. Stress-related stuff. Suicide is very high for law enforcement officers. And how do we, mitigate that? So we encourage that in our academy. They already start with physical fitness. And that's really where I started enjoying running. I kind of took a running class when I was college. I hated every second of it. And I think I looked around trying to find places to cheat and cut and get to the end of the line without the teacher knowing. But when I got into the academy, we had a really great physical fitness instructor, and he really got me into enjoying just running to run, not for any type of a pace. And I think that's where officers need to do that. So physical fitness, communication skills, and then problem solving techniques, and that really comes from being willing to learn, being willing to pick up a book, read about law, communicate with other people to try to figure out, because there's more than one way to skin a cat, seriously. So I could come in and have a problem that, that an officer looks at and they could solve it one direction, but there may be 2 or 3 other ways that we can go as well. So learning to work with one another, but to problem solve on top of that.
Excellent. Is there something that you've learned later on that you wish you had known at the beginning?
If I was to tell my younger self anything, I think it would be that I'm always enough, and I'm only saying that because of where I stand as a gender. I'm not saying that as like a police officer. I think young women come into a role, and when we're looking at any law enforcement agency, we'd like to have it 50-50. We'd actually have it like it's mirror what the population looks like. So that's, race, gender. We would like to have that happen. It's not happening. And then we have to go, why is that? But I think we're getting, especially for us, we're getting a lot better. But when I, walked into an agency where we only have 100 female officers and there's close to 800 of us total, which is better than, but it's not 50%. You have to go, okay, we need to be able, as women, encourage one another in our roles, but also just for ourselves to know that we're good enough to be right where we're at. And I don't have to be like him. I can be like me. because women have a lot of qualities that they can bring to the table in this agency and in this career path, that other agencies, I mean, they really do benefit from what women do bring to the table, and they are enough. We don't have to be like them. And honestly, I don't want them to be like them. I want them to be like they are. So I think just encouraging women that way. And that's what I would go back and tell myself. I don't think it set myself up for any type of disappointment. I think it set myself up for a lot of frustration when dealing with people. And then if I'd known that about myself, I probably would have just let stuff roll off my back.
When I think of, being a police officer, there's a lot of, you need to take a decision or make a judgment at some specific cases. Do you find that in times of your life, career as a police officer, you have had hard times making the right judgment? Like, how did you pace yourself and give yourself the right tools to be the right judge at that moment?
It's constant reflection back on instances where you might have, maybe not have made the right decision. And I'm not saying that, I'm talking about like when you're dealing with people, maybe they said something that really pushed your buttons and you really felt like saying something back to them. And then later your takeaway was that did not go well. I really need to look back on how I handled that. And it does have to be a constant reflection back on, do we debrief on the instances that we had those days? And then the talks that you have, setting yourself up with friends or peer groups or your spouse that you can actually talk to about things that have happened. And, and I've had those back in my younger days of when I look back and went, wow, boy, that was not a friendly encounter that I had with that individual. Now we have body-worn camera videos that officers carry. And it's amazing to me because I have to watch those videos on how they're getting their buttons pushed, and these guys and gals are just really able to navigate the instance that's happening. And I'm thinking, wow, if that was me back in the day, I would have been like so angry. But they know they're under camera all the time. They have to learn some communication skills when they're out talking to people because they don't have the luxury of flaring up. And it could be because they've gotten to take a look at other people's failures, but I think failure is always a feature. It's always something that we can utilize to make ourselves better. Law enforcement agencies are starting to do that more and more. When we look at an officer that might have not taken done the right path, something still is in policy, but it could have been done better, either a training issue or whatever. As a department, we look at that and we still sit down and talk to that officer and saying, there were other options here. You did what was right here, but we could have done it better here. And using our failures to kind of set ourselves straight and then moving forward. And that's that part of that growth that we talked about earlier, using that as a learning feature.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, debriefing being very important. Yeah. Then you learn from your own mistakes or how to do better. Yeah, no, it's very important. So again, communication. To end, what advice would you give to someone who would like to enter your line of work?
We've got people that come on and they could be 45 years of age coming on the police department. So you may already have a career. You may have been doing something else. We get a lot of school teachers that decide they like to be doing enforcement rather than teaching, which is fine. We get a lot of military people that come out of the military and they come to work for us. I think keeping yourself flexible in the fact that you can invent yourself and reinvent yourself at any point in time. And obviously, if you're 45, you need to stay physically fit before you come in because 45, it looks totally different than when you're coming in at 21 years of age. But for advice for them, if they're really interested in it, I know our agencies allow for ride-alongs. So you can ride with a police officer and kind of see what their shift is about, do some research, go online. Now we have just a click of a button. You can pull up any law enforcement agency and find out what their salary is, what their criteria are for them to be on the police department. And when back in the day, I had to have a guy call me and ask to put in an ad, and I had to have him mail me a packet. We didn't have internet to pull all that stuff up. So there's a lot of technology they can look up, and we're recruiting from, we recruit from all over the United States. So, and targeting college areas to pull them in here. So we'll get a lot of kids from New Mexico will come in and be working with us. And at one point it was Michigan. We would bring them in from Michigan. So we've got a lot that come in just to kind of test it out. So if you're wanting and you're interested in it, I would say take a ride along, interview people. This is not something that you go, okay, I'm going to go in and try it out and then vacate. It's a big life decision. I didn't know going through the academy. I was like, wow, how am I going to respond? I mean, I've been kind of some scuffles when I was a kid, sticking up for the kid that was getting bullied, but you still don't know what's going to happen until you're really in the big thick of something, because your body only has two responses. It's either fight or flight, and you can't train yourself out of flight. Sometimes flight is a good thing. But if that's your go-to all the time, it's not going to serve you well as a law enforcement officer. So going through that, but really, checking with yourself the whole time going, is this something that I really want to do? Because it's a calling. They are public servants for a reason. Their job is to protect people they don't even know and put themselves on a line and to possibly get killed for someone that they've never met before.
It's a life commitment, yeah. And it is a calling, like you said. And I'm happy that there are many people that want to do this, and it's because it's very helpful and useful and necessary in our society. So yeah, kudos for you and all your colleagues, because you're doing a great job, and it's been very nice to talk to you. It was a pleasure to meet you. I'm happy that Mary put us in touch.
Yeah.
And I hope that we're gonna have another chat soon, maybe a year from now, and then you can tell me what was what happened next, and maybe you're retired from your police.
We never know. It's a day-to-day thing now. Yeah.
And you seem to be a very active woman, so I'm sure that there will be something new next year.
Absolutely. Yeah, because life is just a journey. Even the choices that people make for their careers, it doesn't have to end at the selection that you had right now. Tomorrow you may find something that you want to do that's different, and just be willing to make that change and be flexible and enjoy the journey. That's all it is. Just enjoy it. Yeah.
No, you're completely right. I hope that people are listening very closely, very carefully, because these are good messages, important messages in life. Yeah. No matter whether you're 20 or 40 or 60, you can always start anew.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm 51.
51. And, you're 51. Yes.
And I got to tell you, it's not over. And it's just, it's so much fun. Who knew? It just gets better and better. It really does. Yeah.
Yeah. I love your positive spirit. Thanks, Kim.
You're welcome.
Like Kim says, life is a journey. Enjoy the journey. At Job Tales, our goal is to help you find your professional path. I interview people from all walks of life to tell us how they are taking their life journey. What are their joys, their challenges, and what suggestions they have for you? If you're willing to tell your story for others to hear, write me at jobtalespodcast@gmail.com.